Lucy's Kitchen, it's Lucy's Kitchen. She's Lucy and she's got a kitchen. Lucy's Kitchen.
And now that we've got your attention, let's cook. Hi there. Welcome to Lucy's Kitchen. I'm Lucy, and this is my kitchen. Today, I'm going to teach you how to make a beautiful spring chicken stew with asparagus and fresh peas. In the spring, we get these wonderful early vegetables, and I'm going to take advantage of all of them in this dish. We're going to start with our chicken, which of course is boneless for this because we want this to maintain all of the freshness of all of the vegetables. So we don't want it to cook very long. Boneless chicken is the perfect thing to use. This boneless chicken happens to be all thighs, which I trimmed of their fat. We don't really need the extra fat. The thighs have tons of flavor and they're really wonderful. So I've got about 2 pounds of chicken thighs right here, and they're boneless and skinless. Next, we're going to look at our beautiful ingredients. So first of all, we're going to have asparagus. We're going to have leeks. We're going to have carrots. Now these are beautiful little baby spring carrots. Gorgeous fresh peas, which I only find fresh in the spring. We've got mint, all of our beautiful herbs. We've got fresh thyme and fresh oregano, salt and pepper, of course, mint, as I said, parsley, and lemon juice. Finally, we're going to cook all of this in ale. I really think this is going to be a very, very wonderful and unusual dish, and it's going to really emphasize all the fresh flavors of the spring. So why don't we just get started? I've got my leek, and I want to talk to you a little bit about leeks. Put that right there. So this is a kind of a medium to small leek. I cut off the dark green parts, and then what you do is you take your knife and you cut it down the middle, and you sort of cut it in both directions so that it gets very floppy. And then you take it over to the faucet and wash it really, really well, because invariably in one of these leaves you're going to have sand. This vegetable is often grown in very sandy soil, and it's really hard to get it out of there unless you do this. So do that, and then cut off your top, and then we're going to just go ahead and cut it all the way through now. So back to those cuts, and I'm going to cut it all the way through. All right, now this leek is really lovely, and you take off the parts that are, I'd say, tough. Like this is kind of a tough leaf, and we don't really need that to interfere with the tenderness of our beautiful leeks. So I'm just getting rid of that, and now I've got very tender leeks. We're just going to cut them up very small. Now, what are leeks? Well, leeks are a type of onion, and they're a very, very sweet onion. So I love them when they're in season, in the spring and really all summer long. They're very, very good, and I tend to go overboard. You can use them for so many things, and if you replace onions with leeks in a dish where you saute the onions for a long time, the leeks will give that dish a really beautiful sweetness that an onion may not impart. So go ahead and try them out. Maybe do a combination of onions and leeks. In this dish, we're just doing leeks. It's going to just make this so elegant and so savory. So we've got our leeks. Now I'm going to just put them in this bowl till we're ready for them. And I really should be using a bench scraper here, but that's okay. Next, our asparagus. Now what I like to do is when I get my asparagus home, I cut off the bottoms. I cut off just all the tough bottoms, and I put it in a glass of water. They keep very nicely. In fact, they stay extremely fresh for several days if you do this. And I change the water every day. Now these have been washed, and we're done with this container. So now I'm going to just break off the bottoms because you still have to do that even if you store them that way. And we're just going to go ahead and break them off. One thing I want to tell you about these is that the asparagus is a lovely little vegetable that breaks right where it's tender. So you don't have to cut it. It really breaks, like this one is a great example, okay? You just kind of push it along the edge until it snaps. Once it snaps, you throw that away and you have the perfect tender asparagus. So it's really, really nice. And there we go. So we just have a few left. Now, it's kind of fun. And this one, there we go. All right. Well, now that we've snapped all the asparagus, I'm actually going to use a knife to cut them up. It's easy to snap them and you know that they're tender, so now we can use a knife and it's fine. And I'm going to reserve the tips because I want them to really shine in this dish. So I'm going to just cut them. And here's my bench scraper, which I went back to get. And we are going to just put them in a little bowl by themselves. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut the rest. Now, I'm going to parboil both the asparagus and our fresh peas. And the reason is that I want them to be almost completely cooked when I add them to the stew. They're going to go in at the very end, and I want them not to have to cook much in the stew. I want them to retain their beautiful green color, and I want them to just be, you know, the focus of our spring vegetable flavors. So I'll go ahead and cut them up, which frankly we could do a lot faster. And they're really so lovely. Now let's see. You can see this is a much handier way to go than to use my knife or my hands. There we go. Okay, a few more have gotten away from me here. And that's it for the asparagus. Our next ingredient that we're going to talk about are carrots. Now these are beautiful baby carrots. They're spring carrots, and in the garden often the very first thing that comes up are carrots, and they're just tender and lovely. And so our local farmers market had carrots that were just picked, and so I grabbed some. We need a half a pound of carrots. Now, one shortcut you can take is to just buy one of those little bags of baby carrots at the grocery store in the produce section. They're pretty widely available, and they work quite nicely, and you can really even leave them whole or just slice them in half. So what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to do them in fairly large chunks and cut them diagonally. They're very attractive that way. And I've got a variety of colors here too, actually. I'm lucky. I got a couple of yellow ones. Not that it matters. All orange is fine. If you happen to have little yellow ones and purple ones, you can add them in, and they just add some fun color, but they're not necessary. Orange is just fine. I have one little carrot. Look at that. Isn't that adorable? It's two carrots growing together. It looks like little legs. So once we get all of these carrots ready, we're going to go over to the stove and start browning the chicken and get this stew going. All right, we're heating up our pan, and I'm going to go ahead and put in the olive oil. We've got a quarter cup of olive oil. And the first thing we're going to do, whoa, I guess that's pretty hot. The first thing I'm going to do is brown the chicken thighs. And so I'll just put them in there. I'm going to brown them a little bit on both sides. Browning is great because it both seals in the moisture, it seals in the tenderness, and it just gives you a little bit of a crispy piece of chicken. Not super crispy. When I say crispy, I mean just firm. And that's what we want. We want to do this in batches so they're not crowded. And as soon as they're ready, you just lift them up, flip them over. They don't have to brown very long. Remember, they're going to cook for quite a while later. And now I'm going to go ahead and put them in this dish and set them aside. I think I'll use a little bit of a spatula to help lift them up so they don't tear. Okay. All right. Next batch. Now, depending on the size of these chicken thighs, you may want to cut them in half when you're cooking them, depending on how many people you're going to have over to eat this with you. And I love these chicken thighs, again, because they have a lot of flavor. But sometimes they can just be enormous. And sometimes they're very, very tiny. And I tend to think that in the spring you get tinier ones. I don't know. I might be wrong. Spring chicken. So I've got 6 that make up 2 pounds. And I'd say that's enough for 4 to 6 servings, depending on your hungry guests. Now I'm going to go ahead and set this aside and add the butter right away. Melt it in our pan. Nice combination with the olive oil. And of course those chicken flavors are in here too. Go ahead and melt that. Next thing we're going to throw in are the leeks. And garlic. We've got a tablespoon of garlic here. And it is absolutely fragrant. And so stir it around just for a minute until you see that it's kind of softening, just a little bit, and then we're going to add the carrots. Now we want to cook this for about 5 minutes, and I'm turning down the heat a little bit. I'm going to cook this and just let everything kind of pick up the oil and the butter and soften just a little bit. Already looking gorgeous. So I'm going to go ahead and add all of the herbs. Now that was the oregano and thyme. And the mint. It's minted. Oh. So these herbs smell like spring. And as a matter of fact, if you grow them in your garden, they're the very first things to pop up after a cold winter. You just one day go out there and there they are. They're sending up new growth, and they're very dependable. So the first thing you see is thyme, oregano, and mint. It's just delightful. And it looks good, smells good, perfect. I'm going to go ahead and add my salt and pepper because we want this to be thoroughly cooked together. And I've got 2 teaspoons of salt and a teaspoon of freshly ground pepper. Just go ahead and sprinkle that in there. And finally, I'm putting in a little flour, and that's going to help thicken this whole sauce. I'm going to do it right now while the vegetables are sauteing. It'll be a lot easier to add liquid. And so I'm going to add some lemon juice, and right away, we've got this gorgeous roux in the bottom of the pan. It just It smells like spring. It's so beautiful. Now, our secret ingredient is our Belgian Ale. So I'm no longer twist tops right here. Gotta use a church key. That's what these are called. Why? I don't know. I'm gonna just give this a taste, make sure it's good. Very good. I highly recommend Belgian ale for this dish, or Belgian style ale. It doesn't have to be from Belgium. And that's that. So now stir this up, and we're going to put the chicken right back in. Just tuck that in there. Now the alcohol will cook off of this ale pretty quickly. As soon as it comes to a boil, it will cook off in 3 or 4 minutes. And that's good. We'll be left with the flavor, but not the alcohol. Okay, there's my chicken. It's all in there. And we don't want to give up this good chicken juice, which they've given up. All right, it's ready to go. So now I'm just going to cover it. And I'm going to let it simmer for about 20 minutes and check it. Now, in the meantime, I'm going to use that time to parboil my asparagus and my peas. And so they'll be ready to add at the end when we're, just about finished cooking this dish. Okay, try not to worry about the length of time that you're cooking the chicken. I would much rather overcook my chicken a little bit than undercook it. You want it to be really tender, kind of fall off the bone tender, and it's going to be beautiful. So let's take a peek. Oh yeah, look at that. I've got a fork, and I'm going to see if it's fork tender. Oh, well, it's pretty tender. Oh yeah, I like that. Woo. Okay, so it's still going to cook a few more minutes, but now it's going to cook with our vegetables. First thing I'm going to add are the peas, then our asparagus, and our secret ingredient, whole cream. I've got about 3/4 of a cup of cream. Now we're going to let this simmer until it thickens. About 5 more minutes. We want everything to still have its gorgeous color and be heated thoroughly, thicken a little bit, and be perfectly seasoned, which we know it is, and then we'll give it a try. Well, our spring chicken stew has thickened beautifully. I'm going to add the asparagus tips and just kind of spread them out a little. Now, they're not going to need much cooking because asparagus tips are supposed to be very tender and really al dente. You could eat them raw, as a matter of fact, but we like to take the edge off of them. And finally, I'm going to go ahead and put some parsley on here. And that's it. We're done. All right, here we go. I can't wait to try this. It's going to be gorgeous. You know, this spring dish can be called primavera chicken. Primavera just means spring. And I think this looks like spring. It's beautiful. All the vegetables and the chicken, everything's cooked perfectly. It smells wonderful. Oh, it's lovely. So don't forget when you're serving this to get a couple of those asparagus tips in there to look very festive. Okay, can't wait to try it. It is so beautiful looking and it smells really good. Okay, let's get that into my belly. Chicken. tender, savory. You can taste all of the herbs that were used to cook this dish. Now I'm going to use a spoon because I want to get some of this delicious broth and some of the vegetables. We've got some asparagus and peas and a little of this broth. The peas pop in your mouth. That's what's great about using fresh peas. So good. Asparagus, tender, perfect, al dente, but not too al dente. It's wonderful. The broth is so flavorful. You will want to serve this with some crusty bread or over rice because you want to get every little bit of it. Frankly, a spoon is a really good idea. So, I forgot the main ingredient here, the ale. You would think that the ale would give it a very strong note, but it doesn't. It's really mellow and almost a little bit of a caramel flavor. In fact, let me try that again. I forgot to look for that. Okay, that's it. The ale totally makes this dish, more so than using wine or broth or anything else. This is an unusual dish. I think it'd be very popular at your place. So let me know when you've tried it. Well, that's it for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you again so much for joining us here at Lucy's Kitchen. And come back next time when we share more delicious recipes from my kitchen to yours.